Hello, everyone. Today is Thursday, October 8th. As always, I'm your host for Collectibles and Coffee, Edward Nguyen. Today, we'll be talking a bit about how to process data. In this day and age, data is king. There's so much of it out there. Any small edge based on any knowledge discrepancy you have over someone else could potentially lead to a huge advantage in the market. I'm not necessarily referring to insider trading where you know something that someone else doesn't, but more being able to keep ahead with the market trends, to be able to use all the tools at your disposal, being able to shop around and look at different markets that are out there, and really being able to maximize your dollar by spending in the right place at the right time. Some of that includes filtering out some noise. Sometimes you hear, figuratively speaking, sometimes you hear a lot of information that comes in and may not necessarily be helpful, may not necessarily be relevant. Social media has really accelerated this process. A lot of chatter, a lot of things are starting to pop up all over the place, and then it's kind of hard to be able to differentiate what's good, what's meaningful data versus something that people versus actual sales from retailers, from reputable sellers, and then being able to use that and then determine what you should do going forward. As it turns out, sometimes your best specs may just come from being able to buy directly on what's available on TCG Player. So today we'll kind of examine some of these marketplaces, look at some sales data, look at what it means to buy from different marketplaces, where and when it is advantageous to choose which marketplace to spend your money at. As we kind of discussed yesterday, most of us, we have a finite money to go around depending on how you want to spend your money, whether it's speculation, investing. Being able to read data correctly and making it work for you is ultimately going to be how you stretch your dollar the furthest. So let's get right into it. As mentioned, there is a lot of data nowadays. Marketplaces are becoming much more homogenized. This is really accelerated at the beginning of COVID as well, not just because of COVID, but leading up to it. Now you have a lot more people who are casual sellers, who are kind of people who are doing this as a hobby, not necessarily as a profession. A lot of people are trying to hop in and really be able to generate an additional source of revenue, right? You have people who are discovering old cards, and now the most common thing is, okay, I found my old collection of Pokemon cards from 20 years ago. How do I go about selling it? Right? Like, this is a fairly common thing, and a lot of people, they choose to jump online. They start looking at some of the more known places, right? Like, I want to start selling on eBay, for example, right? How do I go about that? So with so much data that's available at people's disposal, right? So many different marketplaces, there's so many more options for us as consumers to be able to buy, right? And then all this data, we have places that aggregate prices, right? For Magic, there's all places that will pull data from TCG Player, from retailers, etc., to try and basically track changes in the market price, right? This is relevant in the sense of investing, right? We can look at the price trajectory on cards. We can see what's performing well, what's doing hot, what has a lot of movement to it. In addition, we can also see what's lagging behind, what are some specs, right? Where we can sneak in, where we can go deep on investment, potentially make some money there. And then on a bigger scale, looking at some of these places that are aggregating prices, which I'll visit in a moment, and I'll kind of walk people through the tools I use to see what's out there, what's available for more expensive things, for kind of the higher level investment type level product, right? For graded Pokemon cards, we want to look at the population report for PSA, for BGS, see how many of these are out there, see when these last moved, and then when you're trying to buy them, what the price trajectory has looked like in the past. That gives us some indicator as to what it looks like going forward, and then being able to disseminate that data and then being able to properly use it to make buying decisions going forward. But the crux of this is there's a lot of data. It's really, really hard to be able to use all of it. One, because being able to filter out noise is relevant, right? Like noise simply means any outliers, some meaningless data that's kind of mixed in, right? Usually this applies to numbers from low feedback sellers, right? We don't really want to deal with them. There's people that sell very, very high as a way of direct. There's reasons for this. It's not necessarily just market manipulation as people seem to commonly think. There's a lot of very intricate moving pieces when it comes to looking at data, and that really just makes it more difficult. So these are some of the tools I use. This is some of the information that I find relevant. And when I try and look through for something that I want to potentially purchase to see what it looks like going forward, right? These are some of the things I'll go through and be able to extract some meaningful value out of it. So first, most common marketplace for TCGs that we know of, right? Most of us use this TCG Player, right? This is kind of a good all-encompassing marketplace. TCG Player, they're not directly retailers themselves. They don't own inventory. They're not doing any of this. They hold inventory for sellers who sell via TCG Player Direct, but they don't actually own any of the inventory they are holding. It's simply an aggregate marketplace, not too different than eBay, where it's a platform that allows sellers to list their inventory and sell on. TCG Player is simply a means to facilitate that. Most of us are probably pretty familiar with this. We've used TCG Player in some capacity. It has a wide spread of card games. You can buy sealed product on there. You can buy singles on there. It has more than just Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Those are the big three. They have an ever-expanding catalog. So they've incorporated some more narrow games that don't have quite as large a following as the big three, but they're there. There are ways that you can use TCG Player for other things. A lot of game stores, hobby shops, they do obviously sell more than just Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! So they have avenues for these retailers to be able to sell some of these things on there. For the most part, when you are using TCG Player, your best bet for TCG Player is to be buying cards that are available in large quantity. Something that is recently reprinted, that is not necessarily reprinted, printed in recent years, where there's kind of a deep stock. What you don't want to be using TCG Player for is things like graded cards that are available in low quantities, like reserve list cards. The data there is pretty noisy. We'll kind of get that in a moment. I'll bring up my screen. I have some examples pulled up here where it's kind of hard, again, to properly break down the data and see what card should be properly priced at and what we should buy things at. So here, I will swap to my screen. Here, I have a card, Mishra's Workshop. This was a card that had popped up on MTG stocks. It had a huge percentage increase. What that means is a lot of the cheap copies have disappeared from the market. Now we're looking at a pretty high floor. Right now, if you pull it down, we can see that there are only 4 copies available via TCG Player as of right now. Right, cheapest is $3,500, and then we're looking at $4,900 for an LP copy. We have a graded 10. This is $5,795, and then some seller that's selling this at $9,500. Very clearly evident this card was recently bought out, or a lot of copies just removed from the marketplace. So there's not a lot out there on TCG Player. If we look at the back end, for those of us that own TCG Player stores, we can see what this looks like. On the back end, we can see the last sold listing. This is something that comes up. We can see that it was previously sold. The last LP copy sold for $1,800.90. This was the most recent copy. There's also a TCG market price on here. If we go back to our original listing, we see we have a market price that has this at $1,780.66. So TCG Player doesn't give a definitive answer as to how market price is calculated. So this number there is an upper limit to how much this number can be relied on. In theory, this is some sort of aggregate price, some sort of mean that is calculated by taking into, I imagine, maybe the last 10 sold listings, what have you, to come up with this number. Again, looking at the back end, we were able to see that there are some number of cards that are available. We can see what's on there right now, and then we can also see what the last sold price was, right? Last sold price about $1,800. So the market price a little bit lower than that indicates that prior to that sale of $1,890, there were some cards that probably had sold for less than that price. And if you kind of average those numbers out, that's probably how they get to this number of $1,780.66 for the market price. Of course, even just because this was the last price, this was the last number that was available, it doesn't actually mean that this is available right now. This is the last price. We can see the more recent numbers, right? This is what's available. When there's a huge discrepancy, this does indicate that as of right now, there's a kind of a gap in the market price. It hasn't quite caught up yet, right? We're looking at a pretty large discrepancy. People aren't paying these numbers yet. People aren't paying the $3,500. People aren't paying $5,000 from Mishra's Workshop yet. So this is something to be careful of. We usually see this when a supply on a card decreases very rapidly. As such, copies disappear, and people are usually listing them at much, much higher prices than what's going for on the market price. If we give it a few days, we give it a bit of time, these numbers will go down as more people start listing their Mishra's Workshops. I imagine even if this 3,500 one sells right away, right, someone's probably going to list a new one. If this 3,500 doesn't sell, which I imagine it may not, because someone sees the market price is $1,700, right? That's a pretty large discrepancy. So now you might see someone come in undercut at 3,000, 2,900, 2,800, etc., until we kind of find a more reasonable price equilibrium for this card. So again, TCG Player has its uses for buying cards that are in short demand or has potentially a pressure point on the supply that is available. Not the best use. If we just pull up Magic, we pull up, let's see, Zendikar Rising, for example. We look at relevance. Let's try best selling so we kind of filter out some of the stuff that we don't want here. Search for rares. Right, Moto Land. Right, this is the green. This is a green-white Moto Land. Right, it's a flip. We can see that there's a fair amount of sellers. So when buying, for those of you who are following on the screen, when buying, when I'm trying to buy cards in mass, this is usually what I do. And I'll kind of explain some of these filters to help you buy them. So when I'm buying, I generally avoid sellers that have low feedback. Nothing against these sellers. Again, I would just prefer something that is painless. I don't want to have to deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with complain about condition. A lot of sellers, they list things as near mint. Near mint is a pretty widespread. For most things, I don't care if these are lower end cards. I don't care. Personally, on my TCG Player store, I list everything as light play. I've definitely gotten feedback from people saying, "Wow, this is a really nice condition card for being light play." And that's again simply because even if I open it, it's a pack fresh card. I don't list it as near mint. It just avoids a lot of headache. You avoid a lot of customers who like to nitpick and who claim that their near mint card has a nick on it, which under TCG Player guidelines for condition grading, a near mint card, you can have a nick on it. It's still fine, still near mint. It's not classified as being mint. A lot of people nitpick. A lot of people get into that argument. I avoid that argument entirely. I just list cards as LP. But to get back into this, when you're looking, I usually avoid most of the small sellers. I look at TCG Player Direct first, just to kind of see what the price discrepancy is. Naturally, the nature of Direct is sellers who do so because there's higher fees. The convenience that's there, most prices on TCG Player Direct will always be higher than the prices for individual sellers. If I toggle this on and off, right, if I want to buy exactly one copy of this card, I don't care at all, right? I can pay $2.39 plus 99 cents shipping, right? $3.38, and it shows up in my door. If I want it to get something via direct, right, it's $3.57. Realistically, most people who are buying things via direct, you're buying from a multitude of sellers, and you have the convenience of all of it arriving in one single package at one time. You get free shipping on the orders over $35, and that avoids the situation where if you're trying to build a deck, if you're trying to speculate on a lot of cards, you have to deal with multiple envelopes coming in from all directions. TCG Player Direct kind of negates that, which is why you pay a bit more on them. Usually TCG Player Direct, bigger stores, a lot of more reputable stores will be on TCG Player Direct. That kind of changes the element of having to deal with uncertainty when it comes to TCG Player. When you have to deal with like random sellers, you don't really know who's on the other end. Again, not to knock on any of these people, but this, for example, the second seller, 418 total sales, and they're at 98.7% feedback. This is probably something I would avoid. Personally, again, not to knock on the seller, but they may not be a professional operation. They may not necessarily be shipping cards in the best state. I don't want to get an order that doesn't have an invoice on it. That's something that I'm a stickler for, especially when I'm buying a lot of cards on TCG Player and I'm getting envelopes. I've definitely had mail days where I get 10, 15, 20 envelopes, 50 envelopes even of these orders. And if there's no invoice, then it becomes a pain because I have to go back and reference and see which order came from which seller to make sure that all my orders are arriving. So TCG Player Direct, if you want the convenience, use this option. I do have some reservations about using Direct. For verified sellers, this is kind of a basic tick mark. All a verified seller really means is if you click under, you can click on verified seller, learn more. And realistically, all it means to be a verified seller or a gold star seller or whatever is sellers that have a feedback rating of at least 99.5% and have had at least 100 transactions within the past 90 days are identified as gold star sellers. To me, that's not really that significant. That doesn't really mean much, but it means they've put some effort in. To be fair, there's still some people on here that I probably wouldn't purchase from. But we can kind of have a better idea. The most important tools that I use when I'm trying to buy, this may not be something that people know about, is find a seller. I have sellers that I buy cards from very often, usually because they have a deep supply of inventory. These are the people that are busting a lot of product on release dates. So it's very, very possible that you're able to buy 30, 40, 80, 100 copies of a card that you want to speculate on. And some of these sellers I do go to. With this, you can just type in their name and then you can buy directly from their store. You can search all the items that they do have listed and be able to buy this. This will be relevant in a moment. We'll get back to this in a second. But find a seller, very, very useful tool, especially if there are stores that you have whitelisted or stores that you like to buy from for whatever reason. You can go to this immediately. For me, the most important tool that I use when buying on TCG Player is under quantity. I look for sellers that have 4 or more. Again, when I'm buying things, whether it be for speculation, whether it be for long-term holds, I want to be buying from stores that have deep quantities. So I search by 4 or more, right? You can see, let's pull up some more results here, right? A lot of stores not super deep, right? There's a store that has 13 copies of this card if I chose to buy from them. If I'm trying to buy in any meaningful volume, right, it's definitely going to cost me. This store, $3.91, 98-cent shipping. They have 12 copies, etc. Usually this is the most relevant. This is something I do on release weekend. Again, this is when stores are listing a lot of copies at the same time. In doing so, this allows them to get rid of their copies quickly, right? Their goal on release weekend is they have cards for sale, right? They're needing to pay people back, being able to pay back distributors for busting large amounts of boxes. They want to get their singles sold. So usually release weekend, this is the best time. This is usually when you see the deepest supply. I've definitely bought like 100 copies of some cards before on release weekend that have done well. So here, the most important thing is, and one things that you should use, sometimes you can find great deals on these, is when you're looking for items, we can remove 4 more supply. So one of the things you can do is most people have sort prices by price plus shipping. That means that the cheapest option will always show at the top. So even though this top item, for example, $2.60 is more expensive, obviously, than this item that's $2.39. This $2.60 item has the 78-cent shipping option, whereas $2.39 you're paying 99-cent shipping on. So $2.60, it does come out to be a little bit cheaper. One thing that you can do if you plan on buying a lot of cards is you can toggle it to item price only. It'll bring up the cheapest option. So now this person, Play with Paper, they are the cheapest option, 99-cent shipping. What you can do then is I click on their name and I click shop from the seller and see what else they have listed. Because when people have shipping added onto their prices, for the most part, they generally have their cards a little bit cheaper because by the search algorithm, depending on the way it's sorted, an item that is, if you list an item for $5, for example, if someone lists an item with $5 and free shipping, in order for someone that charges 99-cent shipping, for example, they would have to sell the item at $4.01 in order for it to show up on the same level as the person that is selling the item for $5 with free shipping. However, the shipping fee doesn't apply to every single item that's sold. You're not paying $4.01 plus 99-cent shipping, and you're not paying that 99-cent shipping multiple times. If you buy 4 of an item that's $4.01, you're only paying the 99-cent shipping one time. So what you can do, and this is something that I sometimes browse through, is if you go into this option, the people that sell items with shipping, you can go through, you can look and see what else they have for sale, right? I clicked on, I'm shopping from this seller, and you can see, for example, right, this person, this item is $5.67 plus 99-cent shipping. If I leave the storefront, we can see that most prices are considerably higher, right? The next best option after this is $6 plus 99-cent shipping. That's $6.99. This comes out to $6.66, right? So that's like 30-cent shipping, and this applies to every item. You're only paying the 99-cent shipping once. So if you go through and you find enough when you're trying to shop from the seller, you're effectively saving for each card that you buy from them because you're only paying the shipping fee once. And because they're trying to charge the shipping fee, they're operating under a stipulation that in order for them to get the same price on an item sold as someone who charges free shipping, they're assuming that most orders will contain exactly one card. They're assuming that one person will buy their Angel of Destiny Extended Art and pay the shipping cost. One person will buy the Clearwater Pathway and pay the 99-cent shipping costs, etc., etc., etc. When you're buying multiple of these items, you're combining shipping, and you're effectively getting that 99-cent discount per item if they had listed in such a way where they're trying to remain competitive on the marketplace. So back to our original item here. Let's see if I go back a little bit. That's just one example. So sorting by item price only, fairly useful tool, especially this is very good for sellers that charge a lot for shipping. Right, this person charges, right, if we look at this person, $2.70, they charge $4.99 for shipping. And then if you switch to item price plus shipping, they're nowhere on this front page at all. You're gonna have to go pretty deep to find them because effectively their price on that item is $7.69, whereas most people who charge free shipping, right, you're probably looking at about $3 and change, $3.50 to $4 for this item. So this is, again, very useful tool, item price only. Sometimes you can find good price this way. This is a good way, again, to take advantage of sellers who charge for shipping And if you're able to combine multiple items onto one transaction, you're basically, again, getting a discount on every single item this way. So that's kind of the nature of TCG Player. Most of us are aware of this. I don't really have to go into too much detail. We can pull up something. I have, this is a Charizard VMAX. This is a secret rare, Champion's Path. This is kind of the chase card. This is what the card that everyone wants. Same idea. You can look at the data here. We see a market price, $520.47. This is the part where I'm not completely sure about market price, and again, how TCG Player comes across with this price, because I see, as of right now, at the time that this was listed, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 items that are below $500, which is less than the market price. Granted, there's kind of a steep fall off. Once below $509, we're looking at $565 and more. So it's possible that, again, some of these bigger sellers that have more feedback, possibly direct sellers, may have sold some items that may have skewed the market price up. Again, because TCG Player doesn't release that information about how they calculate the market price, it is a little bit hard to determine how they ascertain the data. If we look at managed product and we go back here, near mint hollow foil, right? Lowest listing right now, $456.77. The last sold listing was $471.96. And the market price still $520.47. So there's that bit of discrepancy. For those of you who have this back end, you can use this. There have been reports where there's a pretty large discrepancy before. Again, it's not completely clear how TCG Player comes up with this market price. It does leave that level of uncertainty. Probably, I imagine a big part of it is they don't want that number abused. They don't want the number manipulated by people who may list cards in such a way that allows them to manipulate the market price. That's probably a big part why they don't completely list how they determine the algorithm they use to determine market price. But when using TCG Player, again, the more data there's available, the more sellers, the more items being listed, the easier it is to determine what the market price looks like and what you should be buying for. And that's kind of the nature of TCG Player. Most of us, again, do use this. We just, most of us fairly familiar with how to use them. Some of these tools on the left-hand side, kind of these filters that you can use to help, are kind of some of the better things when it comes to looking at the prices on TCG Player and how to use them most efficiently. So let's kind of steer away from that. So TCG Player, again, we talked about what it's good at. As mentioned, one of the things it's not really good at is buying kind of items that are more unique in nature. Fundamentally, graded cards. Going to eBay is really kind of the bread and butter for graded cards. Most Pokemon cards probably sold on eBay as well, especially because that's where you get the most visibility. Here I have the Hidden Fates Charizard, right? This is the ultra shiny card pulled up. I just pulled up Hidden Fates Charizard PSA. So one of the things, again, most of us probably know how to use eBay in some capacity. Just to give a quick breakdown for people who don't know how to use it. When I search, I sometimes, if I don't have a specific item in mind, sometimes I'm just browsing. I'm trying to see if there's any deals out there. I don't do this as much, mainly because it's not as time efficient anymore. Mainly because I'm trying to buy very specific things. If you shop by category, and then you pull down here to shop collectible card games, Pokemon TCG, for example, if that's what we want, we can click under Pokemon singles. We can see what's being sold out there. There's a lot of just things that, a lot of clickbait, as it were, people trying to have listings that are very catchy. Again, it helps to have a very good idea of what you're trying to buy. If you don't, sometimes you can go to time ending soonest auction. We have auctions that end basically around the clock. Sometimes you can find good steals on here. There's a lot of good tips and tricks to buying on eBay. I'm not really going to go into detail. That's not really the scope of this. But sometimes, again, you do find good deals by just kind of browsing here and seeing what is available. For the most part, when it comes to data, in terms of being able to process data in a meaningful manner, if we'll go back to the Hidden Fates Charizard, for example, if we type in Hidden Fates Charizard PSA, let's say I'm trying to find a graded copy, I want some information, what should I be paying? We can look right now. There's all listings, best match. So we see some options. We can already see right away what's out there. PSA 10 Hidden Fates Shiny Charizard. This has the collector number. Apparently they're trying to sell Charmander and Charmeleon as well, right? $1,999.99. Pretty high. Next item, this does fall. This is what I mean by some noise. This does hit the qualifiers for Hidden Fates Charizard PSA. This is not what I had in mind, clearly. But, again, it does hit all the keywords. This item does show up, not what I have in mind. PSA 9, Charizard, $700. BGS 9.5. Not sure why it says PSA 10. Probably to help with the search engine. A lot of sellers sometimes will just put random words in, kind of buzzwords that help them come up in search engines. So this does come up, $900. We have a PSA 10, $1,300. PSA 10, $1,225. This is a bid versus a buy it now. Some of these items, right? This is $900 versus buy it now. If we look on this, this is a jewelry store, so this must be a pawn shop or a resale shop of some kind. Arnold Jewelers Bridal Gallery. So probably someone walked in with this, and they just traded it off, so that's why they have this in store. It's kind of interesting. So this option is there. This actually is not a bad price for this, to be perfectly honest, considering what some of the other ones are. But if we keep looking, we have an item here. Right, here's a PSA 9, $703. So we see this, right? There's a fair amount in the marketplace. So one of the things that we want to do is to see what the price is, what we should be paying. We want to go to advanced search at the top. We click on sold listings and hit search. And what this will do is this will pull up completed sales, sold listings within the past, I want to say there's capital. I want to say probably within the past like 2 months or so, 2 to 3 months. And we can see what some of these have sold for. And if we look, we have a $13.99.99. This is a PSA 10. We click on the item for the original listing. This is from a relatively low feedback seller. This is a 41 feedback seller. They have this item here. This line through it means that it didn't actually sell for $1,399.99. It says best offer accepted. That means that they took a lower number because they have the option. You don't have to hit buy now. A lot of sellers, a lot of items. If we go back here, we take a look, right? We click on this one right here. This one, buy it now. If you want this card, you're paying $899.95. If we scroll down a bit, for example, this PSA, $703. They have a best offer option. We can choose to make an offer. They may take something less than $703. They may take $650, for example. This option is there. Whenever we see the green line through the sold listing, that means you can actually see the note underneath, best offer accepted. Whereas here, this item on October 7th, this PSA 10, actually sold for $1,177. This is the actual sell price. This was not a best offer accepted. Someone just clicked the buy now button and bought this item. And we can kind of see, so this kind of gives us a range of what they've been selling for. We know that someone was willing to pay $1,177 on October 7th. This was yesterday. This is relatively new data, right? This is relevant. We can kind of scroll through. We can see what else is on there. We have another PSA 10 here yesterday, October 7th as well. Someone took an offer of less than $1,500, right? The buy it now was $1,500. They accepted a lower offer. Someone took a lower offer on $1,350. So this good amount of data, this is something for us to kind of take into consideration. If we're wanting one, we probably don't want to pay more than probably $1,300, $1,200. That would be considered a fair market price. Some of these sellers, they're asking like $12.99. This is probably a bit high. If you look at best offer, right, maybe he'll take something a little bit lower. This bidding option, right, it's already at $1,200. Maybe this is a bit more than what I want to pay. If I'm okay with a 9, or if I think that this is worth regrading, depending on how good the picture is, I could look at this. It's kind of hard to tell. This is not a super high resolution picture. Hard to tell if this would do better. It looks like it's a little off center, but again, it's kind of hard to tell from the angle. Maybe this is a candidate worth regrading. I would possibly be interested in this one at $703 if you are able to resubmit it and it does come back as a 10. Right, we're looking at a potentially $500 difference between the prices. That may not be that bad of a deal. But we do see, if we're looking at some of the lower conditions on PSA 9s, there's a fair amount in the $700 price range. But for the 10s, for kind of the highest graded ones, right, we're probably paying around $1,200, give or take. So that's kind of the nature of looking at the data, trying to determine what we want to pay on this item. One of the things that we can do is look at PWCC. I'll revisit this in a moment. But for the most part, for eBay, most people do know how to use eBay. Again, some of your best tools, when you look at sold listings, it brings up things that have sold recently. You can search for pretty generic items. You can kind of really search for anything, and it will pull up cards. Some of the best listings for TCG Player have an item where the collector number is listed. So you want to be able to list the item. If you want to search for something with a very specific collector number, right, maybe you can pull it up and look at it and zone in exactly on the card that you want. That's one of the nice things about eBay. This is probably why eBay is used much more than TCG Player. If you're trying to find something on TCG Player, like you're trying to type in, if you type in Charizard, for example, there's a lot of Charizards. It's kind of difficult to find the exact one. The TCG Player has changed their algorithm a bit. It's a little bit easier, but if we look on eBay, for example, this item, Charmander, Shadowless base set, 46 out of 102. Let's see if we can actually pull that up on TCG Player. I know this wasn't an option available a while ago. If I type in Charmander 46, nothing was found. 46 out of 102, nothing's found. 46 out of 102, if I just type this, nothing found. So the inability to find something via collector number on TCG Player, kind of annoying for Pokemon. Again, that's probably why people go to eBay a bit more for Pokemon. If I type in 46 out of 102, 46 out of 102, oops, don't have the number lock on, 46 out of 102, Charmander. We can see it basically zones in on this item, and we can see a bunch of listings for base set Charmander, collector number 46 out of 102. So that's really eBay in a nutshell. That gives kind of a good sense of how to use eBay. Completed sold listings, really your best friend when it comes to looking at what items have sold for. Again, the nature of eBay is that because it is a seller's market, it's aggregate prices from sellers, going back and looking and seeing what recent sold items have gone for kind of gives you a better idea. The nature of Pokemon in this current state is that it's very likely that if you have an item and you're trying to price it, you're going to be selling it for a little bit more than the last sold. For example, if I was trying to sell this item, we're going to pull it up here because it's right here. First edition Charmander Gem Mint 10. This is a base set, right? We talked about how this item was pretty popular. Even though this is a common from the base set, it is in very, very good condition. This is a PSA 10 and it's a first edition. Pretty rare, pretty sought after. Lots of nostalgia going into this. This sold for 4,000 Australian dollars, approximately $2,855.20. If I were to price this, there's not a lot of data. I see a lot of ungraded ones. I don't really see that many graded ones. Here's a PSA 10 Shadowless, not first edition, for $595. Kind of hard to find a lot of data on a first edition base set PSA 10. If I were looking to sell one, I would probably price it probably about 20% more than this, probably in the range of $3,200 for this if I were to price it. That's the beauty of eBay. It is both a tool for sellers and buyers when it comes to pricing things that may be a little bit more difficult to pin down to determine what exactly you want to price it for, what exactly you should be buying it for. And a lot of it, once you really get in the hang of this, it's being able to filter out the noise, because there's a lot of cards on here, right? Someone's listing base set Charmander, 5 cards, never played, right? This is $1.25. I imagine this is pretty cheap. One, seller, not a lot of feedback. This is a 14 feedback seller. And these are just unlimited versions, right? This is a common, nothing too terribly rare. We don't know what the condition is. So this one, probably that low. So this one's not too terribly interesting. So we have to be able to filter out a lot of this noise, a lot of this information that is not really relevant to our search. So that's kind of eBay in a nutshell. That's kind of, again, used for more oddball items that aren't cleanly listed on TCG Player. For example, on TCG Player, it's already hard enough to find a first edition Charmander from base set. Now, if we're trying to get a graded card, the best option on TCG Player would be probably looking at the highest pricing, right? People will probably be listing a PSA 10 on there, PSA 9 on there. It's probably going to be on the very back page. It's probably going to be one of the highest items, and then it would be a custom item with a picture being listed. So kind of hard to do on TCG Player. On eBay, much easier to find, because you can type in such a wide range of keywords, and likely you'll find an item that falls under your search. Moving onwards, another website that I use just kind of as a preliminary source of data, I just click on it every day, MTG Stocks. This is usually pretty indicative of price movements. Let's see if I can get this to load up here. If we just click at the top, interests, usually on a daily basis, they update this. You see what the biggest price movers are. This says since yesterday. You can look at prices since last week, etc. It kind of gives us the cards that have the biggest price increase and decrease. Usually nothing is too terribly interesting. Some of the more interesting ones, Mishra's Workshop, right? New price $9,499. Clearly not correct. This just indicates that supply is basically dried up on the marketplace. That's why we see a huge percentage increase. This star here means it's on the reserve list. We can see a fair amount of reserve list cards have gone up, just kind of keeping in trend with how reserve list cards are doing. If we really wanted to go deeper, we would go take a look on TCG Player, see what they're selling for, see what the market price is, right? We can see what the last sold was, see how many copies are. If we go back to example of Mishra's Workshop, not a lot of copies available, but the market price hasn't really shifted upwards yet. Probably a buyout, probably going to give it some time for the market to adjust if you're trying to buy it. Otherwise, we see some relatively mundane things, right? Extended Art Rankle. This probably means that this card's getting low on supply, right? It's a rogue. There's some synergies with rogues in Zendikar Rising. Probably why we see a small increase in price. Realistically, though, $18 to $20.99. Even though this is a 16% increase, this is one of the larger increases. It realistically just means that supply is slowly dwindling. Cards are slowly being attritioned away as cheap copies are slowly being bought up, which means the aggregate price is slowly moving upwards. Beyond that, right, nothing too terribly interesting. We see a lot of reserve list cards. This is something I usually browse every day, just to have an idea, just to see if there's anything that catches my eye, to see what's really trending upwards or downwards in either direction. So again, nothing of real significance. It's just very quick to browse. You can see kind of how the market's doing and what cards are really trending. Sometimes you do notice patterns, especially in cards since last week. We may look at cards that have kind of a bigger range of potential growth. There's some cards here, but again, most of these cards, nothing too terribly interesting. If we look at just the reserve list card, Season of the Witch, no one really plays this card. It's going up slightly because it's Halloween, right? We're in the month of October. It's reserve list. It's a dark, right? But we're looking at a price from $26.11 to $29.81. Not terribly interesting. So it is there. It is something to acknowledge, but there is an upper limit to how useful this data is. That's what, again, why I don't really spend a lot of time and putting a lot of weight into it. So moving onwards, one of the things we'll look at, is when you're trying to buy from retailers directly, I usually check Card Kingdom. They're a good source. One of one of the things I would know about Card Kingdom is that I usually bank a lot of credit with Card Kingdom. The 30% bonus on top of their good prices. Usually I sit on credit. I rarely ever take a payout from Card Kingdom. Again, I'd rather take the credit and just bank it. The only issue I have with Card Kingdom is that it's hard to buy in quantity from them. If I look at mythics and rares from Zendikar Rising, most items on rares and mythics they cap at 8, which is pretty low. Again, if you're trying to speculate, if you're trying to buy in mass, Card Kingdom not the way to go. You have to buy 8. Usually you wait until they confirm they confirm your shipping, and then you can buy another 8. Otherwise, if you buy 8 in in quick succession, they'll just cancel your order. They'll say that they need to reserve copies for other customers. And the way the pricing algorithm actually works for Card Kingdom is usually when they sell out of a card, depending on how much demand there is for that card, they may up the price. If there's a huge surge in demand, right, for this card, this is at 49 cents, and there's a bunch of people in quick succession who are buying out 8 copies in a row, this will prompt them to up their price to 99 cents or 149, depending on how quickly it sells, depending on how much demand for this card. This is a way for them to prevent their inventory from getting sold out at once. So that's why you can only buy 8, which is kind of annoying. I've kind of moved away from using Card Kingdom. I will still always bank credit there because I know credit will always be useful at Card Kingdom, but there's kind of upper limit to how useful it will be, which is why there's upper limit to how much I'll spend at Card Kingdom. Star City Games, I don't have their tab pulled up. We're all familiar with them. They're a little bit different. They have max quantities of 40. So that one, usually on a cheap rare, I'm okay with getting 40 at a time and waiting for them to relist it for them to buy another 40. 40 is a little bit on the low end, and I don't really use Star City Games as much anymore, but that option is there. That option is nice. That is why I'm aware of them. That's why I mention it. But again, upper limit of how useful they are. These two retailers, Card Kingdom, Star City, they are among the highest prices in the market. For the most part, I don't really spend money. I usually use credit. So one option is if you do have cards, you do convert with them into store credit and you bank the credit. It may be worth using the credit down the line to pick up speculations and gain them in quantity versus just paying outright for them. Because they do have price floors set, right? This is, I imagine, Akiri Fearless Voyager. This is probably bulk rare, right? You probably find this on TCG Player in the range of like 20 cents. And it's possible if you want to spec, right? If you sort by 4 or more, it's possible that there may be a seller that does have this in more than 8 copies, and you'll be able to get it for less than what you're able to do so here on Card Kingdom. One of the last sites I want to visit is it's another kind of price aggregator. I actually know the person who owns the site. I've met him in person, actually. He's a really, really nice dude. Very cool guy. Very, very smart. PokemonPrice.com. What this does is this actually provides data. This provides very good sales data on Pokemon graded cards. So PSA cards, BGS cards. I don't know if it actually does BGS cards. I'll have to take a look. But if I type in Charizard Hidden Fates, for example, this pulls up. There's multiple options, right? This allows us to filter out the noise. This is a little bit better than eBay, right? We are looking for the full art Charizard. This is the shiny version. We can see, right? We look at price history. We can see when this sold. This is a little bit cleaner than eBay. This does contain the eBay number, so we can click on it. It will bring us directly to the listing itself, the original listing. And then we actually have the eBay seller that sold the item. And here we do see that there's obviously a wide range of sellers. The most recent batch was from the PWCC auction cycle that we had. Right here we have the grade, right? We can see that PSA 10 sold, 1376, 1350, 1350, 1225, 1325, 1275. So at a glance already, this is a very easy, straightforward way for us to look at what prices have been in the past few months. This is a little bit slow to update, I believe. We saw that there were some copies that had sold more recently than this. This most recent copy is 930, so relatively recent, but not immediately up to date. I imagine there's probably an upper limit to how often they upgrade this site, but this is still pretty useful. You can see this if you can sort by grade, right? You can see what lower grades have sold for. You can only look at 10s if you so choose, right? There's a fair amount of 10s here, right? We have a pretty good idea of what they sold for. We see whether it was an auction, or a best offer was accepted, which is a big deal. We have a certification number. We can click on PSA, verify that this is an actual item, right? Verify that this was actually sold. And we see the grade, we see the sales date, so we can sort how recently this was sold, right? We probably want to look at the most recent sales data. We can see kind of a graph. It's a little bit hard to tell. We can zoom in on the graph, right? We can see what the most recent sales data was within, within the past week or so, even if we so choose for different grades. And here at the top, population report. These are a number of reported sales. This is important to note that this does not mean that there are 1,348 PSA 10s out there. This simply means that there are a total of 1,348 sales for this item. So it's very possible I may have bought a PSA 10 from someone, and then I took that PSA 10 and immediately flipped it on eBay myself. So that would count as 2 sales, even though it is the same card. This is important to note. It just means that right now there's a lot of PSA 10s that are on the marketplace, that are hitting the marketplace, that are being moved. So some of this, it may be speculation. You may have people that are buying it thinking it's a good deal, that are just buying them and then immediately trying to resell them, right? In the event that, in the example we use, if I bought from someone, then resold to someone, and then that person sold to someone else, right? We're now looking at 3 items. This is 3 additional counts to the population report, even though it's the same card being sold 3 times. So this site, super useful. I will actually reach out to contact the owner to see if he actually wants to come on interview. This is actually worth noting. This is, again, very, very cool website, very useful. This is a good, meaningful way to look at data. If we look at images, right, we can look at images so you know exactly what cards you're dealing with. It's kind of hard to find this database. This is a nice, clean way to do so. Now, everything is sorted by collector number. So here we have, Alakazam is number 1, Blastoise number 2, Chansey number 3, etc., etc. This is a good, clean image gallery, analytics, right? If you want to play with this, you can look at some of the different tools that are available. Again, very neat site. Promos, there's a lot of different promos out there, so it becomes kind of hard to track down all the promos. This is just kind of a good way to do so. This information is there. Definitely recommend you checking out the site. A lot of good, meaningful data is available on here. You do have to kind of filter through it, but you just want to look at Pokemon base set, for example. This will actually load here. Right, look at base set. I want to look for Charizard first edition holo. Right, we click on this. We can see how these have done relatively recently. Right, these are, again, completed sales. Right, a lot of PWCC auctions. Right, we have some lower grades. It does not seem like BGS is included on here, so I did misspeak earlier, but we do see even golden auctions. It's another well-known auctioneer. They had one available, so we can use this and interpret what it means for the price, what it means for the market price. It's obviously trending upwards. That's not really a surprise, but we can see what last sold is, and if we are in the market, we can know what to expect to pay going forward. And I think this is, again, great site, relatively little noise. There is always going to be noise. This is something that we do have to filter out. Once you look at enough data, you have a better idea of what it means. Being able to click on the actual auction, being able to click on the item itself, being able to look at the seller. These are all relevant pieces of information. We want to know that if we can click on options, see if there's shill bidding happening. If the person that won the auction is a low feedback seller, or a low feedback buyer, may something to be considered of, to take into account. It's possible the person maybe shill bid and didn't actually pay for the auction. So that does kind of skew the data. That's something we have to look at. That's something we have to be careful of when it comes to eBay. But this information being here, very, very useful. I definitely recommend checking out the site. This is PokemonPrice.com for tools regarding just graded Pokemon cards in general. So that said, we'll look at one last thing here before we round it out. population reports, this is something I've mentioned before when it comes to graded cards. The beauty about PSA, about BGS, about CGC is that they keep an inventory of how many cards they grade, of how many cards of each grade they get. You can see when you're trying to grade a card how rare it is, how common it is, how many other copies exist out there in the world. It is important to note that the number is likely inflated, simply due to, you probably have a lot of people that will continue to regrade a card if they think that it may be on the cusp of getting a better grade. When some of these older cards, when we're talking about the differences between a 9 and a 10, an 8 and a 9 even, right, depending on how clean it is, it's possible to just crack the card, regrade it, and get it back. If it gets a grade, if it gets a bump in the grade, right, we're talking about a pretty big price difference, and that's a big deal. So some of these cards, I've definitely heard people submitting the same card like 4, 5, 6 times just to try and get the better grade, because the difference between a 9 and 10 is so substantial on some of these cards nowadays that it's worth doing that. So that's why when we look at, for example, if we look at, let's just go straight to the top, Charizard. Number 4, Charizard first edition holo. There's 120 10s and 644 9s. I'm willing to bet a decent amount of these 644 9s are the same card that are being sent in for grading over and over and over again. And I'm willing to bet that a decent fraction of these 120 10s were 9s that were submitted over and over again until they became a 10. 10s are very rare. 10s are very hard to come by. That's why they're so sought after. But again, if you look at population reports, on almost every single card, you do see a huge discrepancy between PSA 9 and PSA 10, and not such a big discrepancy between 9s and 8s. And again, this is the virtue of people who have 9s are more inclined to resubmit their card over and over and over again until they get a 10. Right? If we go down, if we look at Gyarados first edition, there's 85 10s, 347 9s, and 246 8s. Right? That's a pretty big number. That's a pretty big spread. Again, lots of these people, I'm willing to bet same idea. I'm willing to bet that quite a bit of these 347 Gyarados first editions, same card being sent in over and over and over again. So this is just looking at PSA. Beckett, very, very similar population report is out there. You can definitely look at that. Gives you an idea of how many there are out there, how rare it is. Some cards will naturally have a higher value because they are considered low pop. That means that not a lot of people have submitted them in for grading, or at high grade. Some cards are very, very difficult to get high grade. I believe one of them, let's see, Ninetales. This is I remember someone saying something. I think I had a discussion with someone. This card receives a notoriously low grade relative to what it should get because there is some sort of defect on Ninetales makes it very, very difficult to get in nice condition. So finding a PSA 10 Ninetales pretty rare. They don't hit the market that often. This is, again, somewhat lower population than a lot of other cards. Right, Ninetales, not the most iconic Pokemon, so naturally less people will be submitting them. But we look at 44 PSA 10, here we go, 66 PSA 10 first edition Ninetales, 338 9s. Right, when we go down to Poliwrath, we have 97 10s, Raichu 87 10s, Venusaur 133 10s, Zapdos 125 10s, right? A lot more, again, compared to Ninetales. Ninetales, one of those cards, not that many in PSA 10. Getting a PSA 10 would be considered low pop for the people that are out there in the market for it. There's probably some collectors, some diehard collectors that are just searching and searching and searching, trying to get that PSA 10 Ninetales. You're probably going to be fighting against some of those big name collectors in order to get PSA 10. So low pop there does kind of work in your favor. For the people who are considering grading cards, this is something to consider. If you have something that is a low pop card and you think it can grade high, probably worth sending in to be graded, because again, if you do hit big, right, it could be worth big bucks to the right person, especially for someone who's trying to find it for their collection. So with that said, that is kind of the basics of what we wanted to cover today. One of the things that I We'll touch on very briefly. I'm not going to go into huge detail because it is a bit hard to use. I have mentioned it before in other episodes, especially regarding PWCC. The PWCC market price research, this is a very, very good tool. You do have to make an account with them. An account is free to make. It doesn't require any sort of payment or anything. It's simply a matter of you making an account and being able to log in. And then this allows you to pull up market price. You can search for things. The filters are pretty cool, right? If I type in Hidden Fates Charizard, right, we can have the time frame that we want to look at. For eBay auctions, you can kind of set the price range, so this allows you to reduce that noise, right? If I have this full price range, I'll probably be picking up, the Hidden Fates Charizard, not the secret rare version that I'm looking for. So it brings up some other ones. Whereas here, right, if I set the minimum price threshold at $1,000, probably a bit high. I probably should set it a little bit lower. I'm basically only looking at PSA 10s and black labels, and we can see, and we can go back and look and see what some of them have sold for, right? We see a black label that sold for $4,850 here. We have a bunch of 10s that sold kind of in that $1,350 to $1,200 range that we saw before. This allows us to look, and we can actually see that there's 2 full pages of this. There's 181 total results. So this is a pretty good amount of data for us. Again, you do have to kind of play around with this, but the fact that PWCC marketplace does keep such a comprehensive listing does make it relevant. Again, this is a little bit different than Pokemon Price. Again, I like Pokemon Price because I can actually click on the original listing of the item itself. I can see the seller, I can see the item listing, I can see who bid on it, and that gives you a better idea of, was it a shill bid or was it actually a legitimate auction? So PWCC market price, I have talked about this a bit more in the past, so I won't go into huge detail here. Again, good tool for eBay listings. Again, you have to kind of filter around and set the settings so you kind of eliminate a lot of that noise, but very good information here. It is available. You can see how prices have changed over time, right? You can adjust the time frame. Usually this is more geared towards sports cards. You can see how prices have changed over the years, especially on cards that are much, much older. But this tool is there. This tool is handy. This is simply another tool to add to your arsenal when trying to look at data, when trying to look at research, when you're trying to look up prices. So with that said, as always, I'm your host for Collectibles and Coffee, Edward Nguyen. You can find me on Twitter at edwin13. Social media sites for Vermilion are on the right. Again, this is a lot to process. I know that this is really only scratching the surface. I would encourage people, I say this with every video, do your research. Take a look at what's out there. Look at all this data. There's so much data. There's more data than I've even began to start covering. These are just some of the tools I use when it comes to buying, when it comes to trying to get prices on things, when I'm trying to sell cards, how I look up prices. There's much, much more data that's out there. Do your research, do your diligence when trying to buy, especially if you're trying to invest, if you're trying to buy some of these higher end investment pieces, right? Some of these PSA 10s, maybe some of these black labels. Do your research, use your tools, and get a good idea of what's out there on the marketplace, what has sold, and then that'll give you a better idea of where to spend your money now, especially if you're trying to hold for the future. As always, thank you again for listening. I'm more than happy to answer any questions about this. I know that this was a pretty information-packed episode. Some of it was kind of dry. Some of it's kind of hard to follow. More than happy to answer questions. You have them out there. As always, thank you for listening. Wherever you are in the world, be safe, and we'll be back tomorrow with more. Thanks again.